Good morning and happy Shushan Purim. Today is the 15th day of Adar. It's Wednesday, and it is Purim, Shushan, the Purim in Yerushalayim, the cities that are surrounded by walls. So we continue the joy, we continue the Simcha. And today, indeed, we finish the chapter 34, which talks about Simcha. So let's begin with Tzedakah, Gedela Tzedakah, Shemekareves, Esa Geula. So the Alter Rebbe explained in this chapter 34 about the joy that we have of hosting Hashem, hosting God. We, through our faith, through our emunah, and our understanding of the fact that Hashem feels everything and Hashem is everything, that itself fills us up with simcha, with joy, the fact that we are able to host Hashem every moment of our life. And then we said that this is really not something that we can do. Our avos, our ancestors, the patriarchs, they were able to do it every moment of their life. They were constantly devoted to Hashem. They didn't have their own will. Everything was Hashem. But a regular human being, we have our own physical self, and material self and selfish self. And the fact is that we are not able to have this complete nullification to Hashem every moment of our life. And indeed, we learned yesterday that when Hashem gave us the 10 Commandments, we experienced that kind of total nullification to Hashem when we heard the words of the 10 Commandments directly from God. But this was only for the first 2 commandments. And in fact, everyone expired. The soul expired because we couldn't take this. It was too much for us. And Hashem saw this and he says, okay, what we're going to do, we're going to build a temple. And in the temple, that's where I'm going to dwell. This is where the fulfillment of God's purpose of becoming one, to have a dwelling place in this physical world, is fulfilled through the Holy of Holies in the temple. But now that the temple is not here, once the temple was destroyed, so we explained that this is Hashem gave us the opportunity to connect to Him through the studying of the Torah, especially studying the halacha, because this is the will of Hashem. And when we study the will of God and we understand it and we connect with it, with the preparation of that idea, the thought that Hashem is everything and everything is nullified to Hashem, and thereby studying God's Torah, that itself, this way we are hosting Hashem in us. That's what we learned yesterday, and that itself brings us the joy of being a host for Hashem. And now, the Alter Rebbe continues in today to explain that, after all, we live in a world that we cannot sit and study Torah day and night. We need to work, we need to sleep, we need to eat, we have other things to do to survive. So how are we able to have the constant connection with Hashem, to be an abode for Hashem, a home for Hashem, not only during the time that we have to study Torah, the rest of the day when we work, when we do what we need to do? And here the Alter Rebbe goes and explains a number of things. Number one, the Alter Rebbe says that when you have the desire, if this is what you live for, if this is what is important to you, to be connected to Hashem, to study the Hashem, God's Torah, and to do everything to become one with Hashem, if that is what your desire is, then even when you're busy doing other things because you need to do what you need to do, but the fact that you have the desire to do every available moment to serve Hashem and to study Torah, then even the time that you work is considered part of it. Because the good thought, Hashem makes it as if you actually did it. And so let's begin, and the Alter Rebbe continues further, and other ways that we can become a host of Hashem in other things that we do. So let's see inside. This is the Alter Rebbe. So when you set aside time to study Torah, and then you have in your thoughts, in your mind, that if Hashem gives you more ability, you will do more in learning the Torah, then God considers this as if it is done, as this is what you're doing. That's what Alter Rebbe says. And if God grants him a greater abundance of time for Torah study, then he whose hands are pure will increase his effort. Meaning he whose hands are pure, meaning he doesn't have to work that much. That means he has enough and he can sustain himself with working less. Then he will increase his effort in studying Torah. That means he should resolve that as more time becomes available to him, he will devote it to Torah study. Not only that, he says, God reckons a good intention as an actual deed. When you have the intention that this is what you're doing, this is considered the actual deed. Then the Alter Rebbe says, so this is step number one. When you know that you live, knowing that you live to do Hashem's will and to study Torah, and yes, you do what you need to do, but then you continue to do, and when you have the intention that you're going to do it for whenever you have available, you do it, you're going to be studying Torah. But then the Alter Rebbe says, but this is only being considered as if you're studying Torah, but it's not actually doing. So Alter Rebbe says there is something else also what you can do. Now, when you work and you give tzedakah and you give charity, whether it's 10% or 20%, according to the things that it says in the Torah, how much you give. When you give this money for tzedakah, what happens then? You are becoming an agent of God's attribute of kindness. You're acting godly. The giving, this is what God is doing, is giving. When you give tzedakah from your own work, from things that you earn, that you give it away, to help the poor, to help the needy, to support godly institutions, holy causes, that makes it, you become an agent of God. So therefore, you're not only sanctifying the money that you give, but also the rest of the money that you earn. When you work, the effort, everything that you work, you spend effort and time to earn that money, that also becomes elevated, becomes united with Hashem. That's what Alter Rebbe says now. Even during the remainder of the day, when he's engaged in business, he will be an abode for God. How? By giving charity out of the proceeds of his labor. Charity is one of God's attributes, which we are enjoined to emulate. Our sages tell us, as he is compassionate, so must you be. And as it says in the Tikkun Zohar, the kindness is the right arm of God. Now, even though one distributes as charity no more than 1/5 of his earning, nevertheless, says the Alter Rebbe, the rest of the money also becomes elevated. Yet the fifth elevates with it all the other 4 parts to God. So that they too become an abode for him, even the other 4 parts. And Alter Rebbe brings that this is what it says about the offering of the sacrifices in the Holy Temple. When they brought in the Holy Temple, they have the sacrifices, the animal sacrifices, they have the vegetations, the flowers, So anytime they brought an offering of an animal, sacrifices, this elevated not only that particular animal, but the entire kind of the living animals. When they offered the flowers, then the entire vegetation world was elevated to Hashem. And the same thing is with the tzedakah. When you give tzedakah, the entire work that you invest in making the money, everything becomes elevated. That's what Alter Rebbe says. In a well-known statement, our sages have declared that the mitzvah of charity is equivalent to offering all the sacrifices. And what do we find about the sacrifices, like we just said? Now, in the case of sacrifices, all living creatures were elevated to God through the offering of one animal. And all plants was elevated to Hashem through the meal offering, which consisted of merely 1/10 of a measure of fine meal mixed with oil and so on. So similarly, all of one's earnings are elevated when he gives 1/5 to charity. So this is one step. And in addition to that, the fact that everything else is also elevated, says the Alter Rebbe also, when the rest of the time that you're busy working and making money and eating and drinking, when you use this energy that you have from the eating, from the drinking, from working and making the money to be able to eat and drink, and you use this energy to study Torah and to pray, that's another way of elevating all of what you do. מלבד זה says Alter Rebbe, הרי בשעת התורה והתפילה, אוי להשם כל מה שאוכל ושוסו ונהנה מארבע יודס לבריאוס גופוי, כמו שהסבר לקמון. Says apart from this, as explained below, all that one has eaten and drunk and generally enjoyed for his bodily health from the other 4/5 of his earning is elevated towards Hashem during his Torah study and prayer, as will be explained. Now says the Alter Rebbe, okay, so this is what we're saying about the importance of having the joy in Hashem, that we are becoming a boat to Hashem. But at the same time, the Alter Rebbe says we shouldn't forget what the Alter Rebbe spoke before in the previous chapters, that a person constantly needs to realize that we, on the one hand, we are joyful, we're happy with our neshama becoming one with Hashem, but in the same time, we shouldn't forget for a moment that our body and our selfish desires are very, very low and very distant from Hashem. And that is something that we should feel bad about it, that we have that kind of selfish physical body that drags us down. Can you have both feelings of joy and sadness in a way in the same time, says the Alter Rebbe? Yes. Being that this is two separate things, you can have joy and you can have a brokenheartedness from the fact that on the one hand that this is distant from Hashem, but in the same time the joy that although the physical in the physical sense you're distant, but in the same time you have a soul and you're able to become an abode every moment of your day, and that brings us joy. And Alter Rebbe brings an example of the story of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai when he taught his son mystics deep secrets about the holy temple, and this was of course after the destruction of the temple. And his son Rabbi Elazar experienced this dual feelings at the same time. He experienced the feeling of joy for revealing, being learned from the new, deeper meanings, the secrets, the mystical secrets of the Torah. But in the same time, he just learned how special the Holy Temple was. And so the sadness of the destruction of the temple became even greater. So he had a feeling of sadness and joy in the same time. Continues the Alter Rebbe, והנה, בכל פרוטי מיני שמחס הנפש הנזכורים לעיל, אין מהן מניע להסניף זה בעין אבנימס, ולב נשבר ורוח נשברה, ורוח נמוכה בשעס השמחה ממש. All the specific types of joy enumerated above do not preclude one from being shamed and despised in his own eyes, or from having a broken heart and a humble spirit, even at the very time of his joy. Why? It's because there are two separate things. For the shame and so on is prompted by one's awareness of the lowliness of his body and animal soul. While his joy is felt on the account of his divine soul and the animating spark of godliness clothed within it, as mentioned above in chapter 31, that we have this godly soul in us. We find a similar statement in the Zohar. Weeping is lodged in one side of my heart, and joy is lodged in the other, with the story of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And this, the Alter Rebbe concludes the chapter and the lesson of, yes, we have a physical body, and yes, we have dark desires, but Hashem gave us the ability to overcome them, and Hashem gave us the ability to become, to turn them around, just like Purim, turning the darkness into light, and to bring total light. And we merit to have the light of Mashiach very soon. Amen. A wonderful day.